Hello everyone! In today's video, we'll turn a jar into an ecosystem on a budget. The purpose of this video is to share a couple of easy steps to build your own terrarium, allowing any nature enthusiast to bring a little beauty indoors. The first ingredient we need is pine bark. You can get it at any plant, fish or reptile shop. The quantity is 1/4 part, which is the amount you see in the plastic cup. The second ingredient is worm casting. This should be available at your local plant shops or even some construction shops. The quantity needed is 1/4 part. The third ingredient is sphagnum moss, which is a bit more difficult to find, at least in Portugal. This had to be ordered online. The quantity needed is 2 parts, which means 2 of these plastic cups. Ingredient number 4 is filter carbon, which can be found in most fish shops, and the quantity we need is 1/4 part. Be careful with this one, it can get quite dusty. Our final ingredient is pressed coconut substrate, which can be found in fish or reptile shops. The pressed coconut needs to be hydrated because it usually comes in this compressed form. But be careful not to pour too much water because we don't want it soaking wet. And the quantity we need is 1 part, which is 1 of these plastic cups. You can go ahead and give the ingredients a mix. And we'll start by adding a layer of leca at the bottom of the terrarium. This will help improve drainage by creating air pockets. It also prevents compaction and it allows water to drain more freely. We can also cut a little piece of textile material. You can find these in any construction shops. And we'll place the material on top of the leca. We'll continue by adding the mixed soil into the jar. And try to add a little bit more soil at the back to make planting easier, and this will also create a more interesting visual depth. To be able to press down the soil, you can place a little piece of cork on top of a skewer and start pressing down evenly. For this terrarium, I use spider wood for our hardscape, which can be found in any aquarium shop. And you can try playing around with it until you're happy with the placement. Even though it might take a while to create the design you want, you should still take your time. Next, we can start adding some stones, which you can either find in nature by taking a walk around your local parks, or you can find hardscape for sale in any aquarium shops. For this terrarium, I used serious stones. And just as with the wood, take your time until you are happy with how it looks. Next, we'll try to create a design which mimics the roots of a tree. I used little pieces of spider wood for this. If you happen to have a longer tweezer, you can use it here to play around with the roots and with the stones. And this was the result of the hardscape. The hardscape is now complete. At this point, I've started adding plants to the background. One of the plants we've chosen is Hypoestes, commonly known as the polka dot plant. These are a fantastic choice for terrariums because they thrive in high humidity environments. Another reason for selecting it is because of their moderate growth rate and because they remain relatively small once mature, approximately 31 centimeters, but you can trim it even more to maintain it smaller. This makes them perfect for the limited space inside the smaller terrarium. As you can see, the colors are amazing and they add visual interest to our design. Now, if you could get your hands on a pair of long tweezers, they can be incredibly helpful for carefully placing plants into the soil without disturbing the surface too much. It's also great that these plants are fairly easy to find at most local plant shops, so you shouldn't have any trouble sourcing them for your own projects. You can take your time filling in the background until you create a design that you're happy with. I also found it quite helpful to use this Lazy Susan from IKEA. It makes it very easy to rotate the terrarium while planting, making the process much more convenient. Next, I'll go ahead and water the entire surface of the terrarium in preparation for adding the moss. To wipe off any excess water from the glass surface, I simply use a napkin. Our next step is to add the moss. We've collected the moss in our local park and kept it in a Tupperware until it was time to use it. As you can see, I'm using the same cork on a skewer to even out the moss. And I'll be using the long tweezers as well to place the moss on top of the soil. If the moss is broken apart in small enough pieces, it can be placed in between our root design, or we could even pick up the spiderwood pieces and then place them on top of the moss we've just added. I found it quite useful to press down the moss with the cork and even with the tweezers. I'm really trying to keep the roots design clean and to keep the moss off of the spiderwood. By using the Lazy Susan, it's quite easy to see if there's any other areas where moss needs to be added. And here I'm using an aquascaping scissor to trim the longer parts of the moss, but any type of scissor will work as long as it fits the terrarium jar opening. At this point I've started adding the foreground plants. For this project we used Phytonias and a plant called Peperomia. The Phytonia plant is also known as the nerve plant, and it's a popular choice for terrariums because it has a compact size and it's suitable for humid environments. As you can see, Phytonia plants have amazing leaves, which can have this vein design in white, red or pink. In terms of using the Peperomia plant, this is another excellent choice for terrariums. The plant is naturally compact and slow growing. They are easy to care for and are relatively low maintenance. This is a good plant for a beginner because they tolerate a bit of neglect, making them quite forgiving. Even though Peperomia doesn't need as much humidity as the Phytonia, it can adapt well to the terrarium conditions. The final step is adding the springtails. These are tiny creatures which help maintain the terrarium clean and mold-free. The springtails are natural decomposers, breaking down organic matter such as decaying plant material, mold, and even leftover food from animals.